Welcome to the DTC Insider Podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisenthal.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the DTC Insider Podcast. I'm Brian Roisenthal, your host, and today I'm going to interview Neal Goyal. He's a DTC coach for $50 million plus brands at Tapcart, the leading platform that turns your Shopify site into a beautiful mobile app. He was recently named Top E-commerce Voice by LinkedIn. Congrats. So you'd better listen to what he has to say about the present and future of e-commerce. Neal, thanks a lot for being on the show.
Hey, Brian, thank you so much for having me. I've been following your journey for a long time too, so it's an absolute privilege to be here. I look forward to a conversation today.
Likewise. I've been following you for a while, so I admire your content. It inspires a lot of brands. So again, thank you as well. So I know you work with big brands in the DTC space. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think, or what do you see that's going on in the DTC space right now?
Sure. I think we have this really unique phenomenon that's taking place where D2C has never had quite a normal state, right? We had D2C as a channel wasn't a thing, right? For most brands were accessible. Shopify made it a lot easier. But then we came to a period where, customer acquisition costs were going up, but then that was also largely ignored because COVID kind of fueled a lot of e-commerce in a really big way. So a lot of those challenges were offset by just rising demand for direct to consumer brands and the products that they offer and accessing them through this new channel. And so now when we come into this period now, here we are in 2024 where the, the challenges are still there on customer acquisition cost. And if anything, the cost of doing business in every other part of their business, whether it's fulfillment, whether it's on, product creation, whether it's actually the cost of their teams, like the cost of doing business has gone up too precipitously, right? So number one challenge brands are having right now, profitability, plain and simple. Like profitability is front and center. And we often think of, well, why is that a new thing? Like, why are we thinking about profits now? And the reality is, we actually just lived through a D2C environment where all, brand owners and founders and CMOs looked at were just the top line revenue, and profitability genuinely was given a distant afterthought. And 2023 was the start of that unwind. It was a start of brands really realizing, wow, we have to A, downsize, B, we need to become more efficient. It's not revenue at all costs anymore. Now it's most profitable revenue, right? These are the things that I'm seeing happen across both ends of the spectrum. They're impacting whether you're a $10 million brand or a $100 million brand. They're literally struggling with the same thing in terms of driving like real incremental profitability over the course of time.
Interesting and very true. I see the same thing. And I have a question about that, which is what are those brands or the brands you work with doing about it? Because one way to approach it, of course, is cutting costs, cutting expenses, but that doesn't solve the whole equation, right? That solves one thing. So what else are they doing?
Yeah, let's like zoom in onto like the marketing component right now, right? Cutting your marketing spend is a double-edged sword, right? At the end of the day, yes, you might be peeling back on those costs, saving on those dollars, but at the same time, you still need to be spending at the top of the funnel to grow awareness, bring new customers into your funnel and whatnot. Acquisition has to remain intact, right? The problem with acquisition, though, the challenges with acquisition is that because the cost of the customer acquisition has incrementally become higher over time, you know that for I'd say 90% of brands out there, that first purchase that customer made is not a profitable one for the brand, right? It takes that second, third, fourth purchase for that brand to see profitability with that individual customer, right? Again, largely due to those rising customer acquisition costs. So Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of brands that have found a way to achieve first order profitability. But at the end of the day, it's relatively nominal into what that profitability is. It's going to come from retention. And I think retention historically has been given a distant afterthought. It's like, okay, now the customer bought, we could retarget them, we could put another ad in front of them and bring them back again. And that was fine because acquisition was cheap. But now it's not. And now brands are saying, how can I engage the customer in a more cost efficient way? Now that they bought something, how do I engage them more meaningfully, have a better quality conversation, develop on the customer experience, the customer engagement, the interaction, essentially bring that customer closer on the scale of loyalty so that we are able to drive profitability to that individual customer. And I think this is where, as much as brands say they're focused on retention, their actions and their budgets wouldn't necessarily tell that same story, right? They'd say we do email and SMS for retention. Well, no, those are retention tools, but that is not a holistic retention strategy. Retention strategy means, how do I take that customer and the different phases of loyalty each individual customer may have and bring them one circle closer, right, to the center of like becoming a true brand fan. That's what develops the retention, because ultimately profitability, that's where profitability is coming from. I mean, they say that, to acquire a new customer is 10 times the cost of retaining an existing one, right? And I think that's where brands are kind of trying to play a little bit catch up right now, right?
Interesting. Yeah. A few things you said that I want to highlight. First, being profitable in the first purchase is not possible for many brands right now. It is still for many, but it's not for as many as it was before, right? So that puts ROAS in a different position as brands used to put it, right? Because every brand used to have a target ROAS. They still do, but they used to have like a target ROAS as the north to follow. Like I want a 4x ROAS, 8x ROAS. And now it's not the ROAS, it's the cost per customer acquisition versus lifetime value. Only they need to try to decrease the time between purchases and try to get as much value as they can as soon as possible, right? Because otherwise, cash flow gets in the way, and they say, "Hey, I understand the long-term plan or the long-term game, but if I'm not cash flow positive, how on earth am I going to, you know, live with that?" So that's an interesting point. I tried with the clients we work with and brands we talk with, we try to tell them the same thing over and over. And the second is the get like the old tactics, or let's say before it was easier to get away without a strategy and only with tactics like setting up paid ads or email marketing campaigns, and that was all they needed to thrive, let's say, in a simplistic way, right? And right now they need to forget a little bit about the tactics, and I will love your thoughts on this, and dive deeper into the like go back to the basics. I know it's a well-known saying, but it's like I know it's true. I discussed on an episode with a former Disney executive about how to generate a wow reaction on customers by mapping out the customer journey and improving each of the steps along the way. And I think it's not only the fact of having the email as a channel, but what you communicate. It's not the fact of having an app or a community, but what do you say? How do you engage with them? It's the content that matters the most. I don't know if you agree with that.
I fully agree with that. I think when you think about a lot of bad habits, I think that were created during a time of an easy GDC environment where we had these stores pop up virtually overnight. And it was so easy to grow because cost of acquisition was relatively cheap, and there was huge demand from driven by, COVID, right? So a lot of bad habits were started from the beginning, right? Where they didn't have to think about retention. They didn't have to really think about the customer. You know what you needed? A Facebook ads budget. That's all you needed, right? If you look at most of those brands, though, that were born with those bad habits. What happens when you turn off your ads budget? What happens to your revenue? That will tell the story. If revenue goes to near zero, that means you obviously haven't prioritized building a fan base, a loyal customer base, developing relationships with your customer, learning about your customer, catering to your customer, personalizing to your customer. Whereas if you still have, let's call it 30, you'll still take a hit from turning off ads, but let's say you still have preserved 30 cents on the dollar, right? Still have 30% of that revenue coming in from your existing customer base. Then you know what you prioritize there? Brand. I've heard a lot of experts say you don't need to prioritize building brand until you get past $10 million. I wholeheartedly disagree. I would say building brand from the ground up, that's what builds brand fans from the ground up. That is taking how do I want my customer to feel when they are in my customer funnel, whether they just bought or whether it was 6 months ago. Building a brand is what causes that lasting impact. It's harder to build a brand. It's harder to build a brand that people love. It's so easy to turn on a Facebook budget, right? So at the end of the day, I think a lot of bad habits were formed where brands just didn't have to focus on brands. And now they're playing like, what can I do to engage the customer? What can I do to do all these things? They're playing that in that catch up mode. But at the end of the day, customer loyalty doesn't come from a Facebook ad strategy.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from a tool or a tactic. It comes from building brand.
I mean, if you don't build a brand, how do you stand out? I mean, chances are you're building a product that somebody else sells too, right? You can be different for sure. Everyone thinks they're different, but if you don't build a brand, you don't have a reason to be. You don't have a target audience or niche you target. There's no reason why choosing you over your competitors, right? So that's why you have it right here, right? The brand word.
Yeah, go figure, right? Go figure.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been discussing that there are a lot of moving parts. You kind of rely on the changes of the algorithms like I don't know, iOS 14, 15, 16, 17 rules change all the time. So that's why it's important that you own your audience, you have a brand, you have your own communication channels and many other things because things change over time, and if they change in a way that you were like highly leveraged, you will lose that leverage and that will impact your top and bottom line. And in this case, the latest change is in email, right? What's going on in that space?
Well, I mean, a lot, right? But in short, it's like worth rewinding the clock for a moment and think about why the email as a channel became so powerful for a brand, right? It, you mentioned own channels, right? Own channels wasn't really a concept pre 2021, right? It wasn't a term, it wasn't a phrase. And again, the cost of customer acquisition was so cheap. And so as soon as iOS 14 hit, everyone's like, oh, it's just another iOS update. And they kind of took it quite lightly. It wasn't until like 6 months later where they just had this huge wake up call to what it did to conversions. They're just forced to cast a wider net, and therefore the performance of their campaigns, going down. And everyone's wrapping their head around what they had gotten used to this very amazing bullish trend, and it just a rude awakening that took place post iOS 14. That was the first grappling that took place. Every marketer that was managing a brand or campaigns during that time want to forget 2022, right? Like forget 2021, 22, like it never happened. Understandably so, right? That's where the conversation about the own channel really came into fruition. In other words, post iOS 14, hey, what are the channels where we own our audience, own our subscriber list, own our messaging, and who sees our message, be in control of who sees our message, right? Not an algorithm, not a third party platform. So this is what gave rise to email, SMS, and mobile apps as a starting point, right? These are the three primary owned channels that were being used in ranking order: email, SMS, and then mobile apps, number three, right? When you think about what happened then in early 2022, we had iOS 15 that hit, and all of a sudden Apple's taking aim at email privacy and whatnot. We saw opt out rates going up on email. We saw efficacy on the performance of those campaigns. We saw Gmail that launched its dreaded promotions tab that came out, filtering those brands' messages. A lot of these things were happening once that impacted email performance at that time, right? So then what happened? You see Attentive and Postpilot blow up during that time because email as a channel was slightly impacted. Now, it wasn't a monumental impact, but it was enough to scare brand marketers to say, we need to diversify our channels. So let's diversify and let's do SMS, right? Well, what happened with SMS with iOS 16? Apple says, we want to, in the name of consumer privacy, we want to be able to prevent spam messages from landing. We want the mobile device experience to be ideal, private, a safe space for our user, and therefore iOS 16 was launched. And even though the the intended target was not brands, it was actually the real spammers. Brands were the unintended consequences, such because they send campaigns from an unknown number, which get filtered into a different tab if the user has that setting activated, and most importantly, the report junk function that was now there, which was never not there before. So opt-outs have gone up since then, right? Now, the email challenges, the SMS challenges, I'm not saying that any of those channels are going away, not at all. It just got harder, right? It just got harder. The performance was just impacted, right? And it was the combination of these things that all of a sudden iOS 17 with the link tracking and all these changes, everyone's fighting against Apple all day long. They're just fighting, and marketers are fighting against Apple. And Apple is just trying to protect the consumer, but also protect their own ecosystem too, right?
Yeah.
Um, so now getting back to your question, now the Gmail changes come into play. So all of a sudden you have this left hook coming um, out of nowhere, right, for email marketers, thinking Apple's the only one that's against us right now or trying to make lives harder. The Gmail changes, Yahoo changes come into play.
And do you think that represents a huge impact for brands, that many brands fall into that criteria? I think it's 0.3% spam rate.
Yeah, great call out. I think you know when I mentioned to you when a lot of brands were born during an area of a time of cheap acquisition, so bad habits were formed. Prioritizing brand building was not until much later. It was all because we could grow on Facebook ads. Those same bad habits trickled into email as a function too, where brands may not have prioritized the need for segmentation, prioritize the need for collecting first party data and actually learning about their customer, and then leveraging that data and what they learned in their email campaigns, right? To actually like make email a value add for the customer instead of they're just mass blasting their customer all with the same offers, not really speaking to the customer themselves, right? So is this crushing email? No, I'm not saying it's gonna like email's dead. No way. I wouldn't even go on a limb to even say that. No way. It's just gotten harder. It's getting harder. Now there's some brands that are gonna be fine because they've already done some segmentation, right? They've taken the work to learn about their customer, but the vast majority of brands haven't, right? And I think those are the ones that are gonna have that scrambling type of effect. No matter what though, whether you have prioritized segmentation or whether you haven't, 0.3% is unforgiving. That is an unforgiving stat threshold. 3 out of 1,000 get flagged as spam, and you are effectively being put in, you know, timeout by Gmail, right? So even if a brand has done that segmentation, um, they can still find themselves in a scenario just because Google has changed the standard for what is spam and what is not. Right?
Yeah. And I think I can do a parallelism with the iOS 14 update back in 2021. I think it forced brands to level up their marketing, as many people said. I really believe this is true. because the filter was the audience and now the filter is the message, and brands had no idea what the message should be because I mean, it's simple. If you have a theater full of people who represent your target audience, all you need to do is have a sign or an ad, in this case, with a regular message, and they will know what to do about it because they are your ideal target audience. But now, if you're delivering your message uh, to a broader audience, you need to be more targeted with your message, right? And it's not the average message or the average ad anymore. And brands should do their due diligence and find what their audience wants to know about. So that's why everyone is talking about testing creatives, video, image, and angles, and because they want to know what will trigger them, right? And the same thing is with email, I think, right? In different aspects, like you need to level up not only the segmentation, as you said, also the messaging, right? Brands that didn't pay attention to that detail will need now. I don't know what you think.
You're absolutely right. Segmentation is it's a beast of a project. It's not something that can be done in like a couple of days, right? Um, there's two ways to go about doing segmentation. Is like like just collecting some quick data points, putting down segmenting customers to different possible customer journeys. But then there's the brands that have just been learning about their customer from day one, like have devoted the time to learn about their customer from day one, and they go into a segmentation project, and that type of outcome is going to be huge because the other brands that are scrambling to create that segmentation now so it can be more personalized, they're trying to, oh, let's go back and look at all this data that we have in Shopify or where else, customer behavior, what they were doing, and then let's segment, make it more personalized. But they haven't spent the time to actually learn about their customer once their customer came into the funnel, right?
Exactly.
And they truly don't know their customer preference. They know that their
Exactly.
customer bought, they know their customer might have bought a second time, but they don't know why the customer bought. They don't know what was the piece of creative or what was the message or what was the emotion that was triggered as a result of buying again. What was the reason why that customer is a brand fan and why they continue to come back? Like all of these things they didn't learn, take the time to learn. Those things only happen if you're prioritizing brand, right? Whereas if you're focused on just building a Facebook ads budget, focus on like, let me hit them with a bunch of SMS, let me hit them with some emails. That's so one dimensional. Whereas if you're taking that holistic view of your customer, pretending that they are a guest in your home, they knocked at the door, they walked in, i.e., the first purchase. What do you now? We just do we bring them an appetizer while they're at the door, or they we invite them to come sit in on the sofa, maybe have a conversation, ask them a couple of questions, and then find out what they prefer for their cocktail of choice before you assume that you know what that cocktail is, right? It's literally
Exactly.
bringing your customer into your home and learning about them to make that experience for that guest that comes in most impactful. And the only way you can do that is by asking them, right?
Um, that's why I was saying before that brands should go to the basics. Like they should actually, I mean, if they say they care about their customers, they should actually get in touch with them and ask them. And I have interviewed a brand here on the show that they said that they not only call their customers to thank them and ask them questions, they also, and this is pretty cool, they also record some of those calls, and those are not video calls, by the way. They record themselves on the phone, like holding the phone like this, talking to the customers with their permission, of course, because sometimes they give them like really funny testimonials on why they bought. Like once they are a men's underwear brand, and I remember one ad was about a customer that bought you know uh, one product, and then he came back a few days later and bought like 30, like just like that. And they asked them why. Well, because if my wife says it looks good on me, I will buy you all the products you release and many of them. So it was like that. So they record those calls. So they show them true testimonials to people like watching the ad. And also they showed them implicitly or explicitly as well that they care about their customers' opinions, right? So the
And beautifully said, right? So think of this, right? There's different channels in which you can leverage what you learned from that customer. That customer came back to buy 30 of that item because his wife said that he looked good. So he's like, I just want to do this all month long, right? So by learning that, by which channel are you going to engage that customer? You could choose to send an email. That could work, right? Saying, "Hey, something that personalized." Because I guarantee you, if he's one person that bought because his wife said he looked good. He's not the only one that bought for that reason. So what if you could segment that customer base? Let's say it's 20 people who bought because their wife said they look good. You can hit them with an email, and you could say, "Hey, like what's your wife what's your wife say today? Here's this so you can look nice for your wife, this, that, and the other. Here's some other unique options for you because of this." You could hit them with an SMS saying, "Hey, shop to look good for your wife. Here you go. Here's a code for 20% off for XYZ." Or you could hit them with a push notification to say, "What'd your wife say today?" That's it. Question mark. "What'd your wife say today?" Question mark. Right? There's three different channels. All of them can work, right? All of them have a
Yep.
different style of communication. You have email that's heavy on creative, right? You have SMS that is meant to be mobile first, but at the end of the day, it's a transactional channel because it's expensive to send an SMS. So you got to include a call to action with some kind of discount. It's transaction heavy, right? Push notifications are free, so you can just be conversational with the customer. So you say, "What'd your wife say today?" Question mark. That's it. No call to action. But now the customer believes that you understand them and having a conversation with them. Every channel has its value, but where was the beginning of all of this? You asked your customer. You
Exactly.
asked your
Even
customer.
I recently saw something that Opti posted through two on these, or I don't know if it was Ash or someone else in the team. Like they used an acronym that I don't know if you saw it, but they used an acronym that that a customer used in their community in the comments of the ad, I think, and they used that in the creative, right? And it was a top performing creative according to them. So I think it's smart, as you said, to use it everywhere. Use it in your marketing. Why not? If they are buying because it looks good or because their wife says it looks good, why not using that in your marketing? So you mentioned push notifications. Could you please tell the audience more about them in case they don't know what they are?
Sure. So when you think about, the whole mantra behind push notifications, or an app for that matter, is the concept of meeting that customer where they are, right? And then developing a level of loyalty with that customer, just bringing them kind of one ring closer, right? Making that customer relationship just a little bit closer, right? Um, when you think about the email as a channel, SMS as a channel, both are strong channels, will always continue to be, strong channels, but they all have their defined purpose. One of the things where many brands are lacking is like, how do I actually develop that customer loyalty, measure that customer loyalty, right? Without having to just hit them with the message, right? Because right now, every single time that customer comes back, they're coming in response to that email. They're coming in response to that SMS, right? But how do I actually just get the customer to love the brand and just to want to come back to the brand? First step is the real estate play, right? The concept of living not in a mobile browser, not living in a email inbox, not just living in a text message thread, but directly on that device home screen. If you look at the average customer, the average user, iPhone user, looks at their device 344 times per day. That's sad, I know, but it's true, right? Now, if they are going about their day and every single thing they do is on an app in some form, they hail their Uber from an app, they order Amazon on an app, they order their DoorDash meal on an app, they go and check their calendar on an app, they check their email on an app. Everything they do in their life is on an app. So when you are living where their eyes are, you're living as an icon, you're just essentially part of that most valuable piece of real estate. where you could own, right where that customer's eyes are. And you're not hitting them with the message yet. You're not doing anything yet, but you are planting the seed of your logo, your brand that's front of mind as they scroll left and right for an average 4.5 hours per day, right? This is what promotes so many more sessions from each user that could be possibly achieved on other channels, right? So if you were to take the email channel, the number of sessions from each user you get there, the SMS channel, a number of sessions for each user. Okay. Add those two together, multiply it by 3. And that's what you're going to get as a value of living on the device home screen from literally doing nothing, actually doing nothing, but just living there, right? It's almost like a real estate analogy. If you live in Idaho, your property is going to be worth this. So Idaho could be the browser, right? If you live in Kansas, your property is going to be worth another value, right? I.e., the email, maybe in an inbox or text message in a thread. These are all different cities. But what happens when you take your brand and move it to Malibu, right? The value of that real estate goes up. The Malibu is its location, location, location. And that location is right on the device home screen where that user is staring 4.5 hours a day, right? This is the value of like that subliminal loyalty that can be built with between customer and brand. So now the question is, you have a beautiful piece of property, maybe a vacant lot that you've built. Do you decide to build a pool? Do you decide to expand on it, increase that property value? And that's where push notifications is really coming into play there, right? It's allowing you to start a conversation with your customer. They have told you they want a conversation, that they want a deeper connection because they took the step to download the app, right? So now it's where you say, okay, think about this. This is not just any customer. This is not just a someone that's on an email list, which is in the funnel, right? But someone who downloaded your app is lower in the funnel. That's a brand fan, right? They're craving a deeper connection, which means don't hit them with that same message you're doing on email and SMS. Be more conversational with them. Treat them like a VIP. Don't- Avoid the transactional relationship. Instead, make it conversational and personal, right? And you can do all of that segmentation to have different conversations with different users depending on who they are too, right?
Interesting. So how are brands leveraging the apps, or asking it differently, what are most users interested in finding in an app? Is it a replica of the online store or is it something else?
Yeah, great question. Listen, a lot of brands will say like, why do I need an app? Because I have my website that's beautiful already and it's awesome, and I direct all my traffic there. If it's a replica of the website, I don't personally recommend that route, right? I don't recommend that route because you have to treat that customer as that guest that came in your home, someone that downloads your app. Is this a random person that's going door to door selling something to you, and then you just open the door and shut the door on them and choose not to buy, or maybe choose to buy if you do? Um, no, this is a guest that you invited into your home. This is someone you asked to arrive at 5 p.m. on a Friday. This is someone you care about, someone you want to treat with respect and give them personalized experience. You want to make a meal for them that they enjoy. You want to serve them the drink that they will enjoy. You want to give them an experience that they'll remember, right? That is what the app should be. The app should be a unique differentiated experience, an experience that they cannot get anywhere else. Because if it is a replica of the website, then where's the value for the customer there? The customer needs to understand that they're getting something unique, that they're being given the red carpet. I think the most common example where we see huge outcomes where customers feel this way once they download the app, or why customers get excited about downloading the app, is the concept of early access. A brand is launching a new product or a collection or a variant or whatever, what have you, and they do early access in the app prior to the website. Now, the customer immediately, who is already a loyal fan, immediately flocks to the app because they can get it there first. And something about early access we see across the entire platform, it just works. Like it literally just works, right? Now the brand is excited that's saying, yes, it's okay that that customer that was previously may or may not have shopped the brand already previously, But now I brought them over here from the website to the app. And yeah, I'm taking that sale away from the website and having them shop in the app channel. But the benefit is now that user is living on the device home screen. You're living on the device home screen with that user. They're visiting 4, 7, 10 times per month now. Those sessions converting at higher conversion rates because of the friction points an app removes compared to a website at higher AOVs because give customers a better, more intuitive experience, add more to the cart. And then on top of that, they come back more frequently because you're living on the device home screen, weaving and push. The net incremental is the LTV boost. The user in the app is spending 2 to 300% more than they previously were on the website, right? So the brand knows why they want them in the app, but the customer has to believe they're getting the value. And the value is, example, early access. Or if they know they're doing a semi-annual sale, what if you launch the sale 2 days early in the app or a day early in the app? Anything early access just works. Customer feels red carpet.
Yeah, and I think it's great for many brands that are looking to break through the noise and find the next big thing or the next big channel. You talked about email or paid ads, email, SMS, and now this seems like it's not a red ocean just yet. It's a blue ocean that they can take advantage of and use it for delivering value to the audience to again break through the noise through push notifications and through valuable content on the app as well. Do you have a few examples of how brands use the app besides the early access? What does it look like for a brand of your choice? Whatever. Yeah, what do they have when you open the app? What do you see?
One of my favorite brands is Built, right? They have built an incredible brand. They have a fiercely loyal base. I am amongst that loyal base, right? When you think about their initial decision, their exploration of the app, actually, there was three separate conversations that took place prior to them actually deciding to launch the app, and there was a lot of reservations saying, "Is it just taking away from the website? Is this taking away from our other channels? We invest so much to make our website look a certain way. To take away from that felt mm, difficult, right? And to take that customer away from that channel and put them into a new channel." When they finally did, and they decided to kind of make the leap and launch it, and they only launched it maybe about 6 months ago now, right? So they're relatively new in their app journey, but they did some really cool things. First, they saw 15% of revenue coming in the app from day one, right? 15% of total built revenue was flowing through the app in the first 30, 60, 90 days, right? So that was 15%, and that was with zero marketing. That was with just telling their users that they had an app, but no unique reason to download it. It wasn't until they have their October sale that they do a twice annual major sale, um, and they decided, you know what, let's go app first on this one. Let's go early on this one. What they found was staggering for them, where they just realized, okay, now during that period they had 46% of revenues, total built revenues flowing through their app, not through their website, right? And the craziest part about it is most people think about an app as a retention tool, as someone that has already bought from them. What they learned was nearly half of those that were shopping in the app during that sale were new to file. In other words, that customer had never even been on an email list before, had never even shopped the brand before, was nowhere in the near any one of their funnels. And they had half of the users say, "This is early access. I want to give Built a shot," and they did it through the app. And the benefit, as they saying, is their AOVs sky high compared to their website, right? The conversion rates sky high compared to their website, right? They saw the performance. So when I met with Kyle, right? Kyle and I actually were on stage. Kyle's their head of growth over there. Um, I was on stage with Kyle and we were talking about this story at Grow LA, and he just said it just completely reshaped what our 2024 roadmap needs to look like, because these customers we didn't pay to acquire. We didn't pay to acquire. They were new to file. We gave early access, and now they're in a channel where they're just spending more than they than any one of our other customers would have. And I think this is not an anomaly. This is like a common thought, but I think when you think about it, it takes time to ultimately wrap a brand to wrap their head around, hey, I know they're shopping on my website. Let's have them continue shopping there as they please if they prefer. But why not launch another new channel? Because at the end of the day, every customer is different. Why not give that customer the different channels depending on how they prefer to shop or engage with the brand and let the customer vote with their wallet what they prefer, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that I'm a true believer in the fact that brands, in order to scale, let's say with ads, they need to test different type of messages, because the same way somebody reads copy and they love reading copy, many other people don't, and they prefer looking at the image, and many other people engage with video, and the same with the different hooks messages. So here's the same thing: many people love shopping on a website and many other people don't, and they prefer shopping on an app. So I think the more the merrier. And I understand the fear of, founders or brands of, replacing, like moving traffic away from or the fear of cannibalizing a channel. So to those people, what would you say to those people afraid of cannibalizing the website?
I think there's two benefits that a brand would see. Like, yes, is there a world where customer finds the brand's app, falls in love with the app, chooses to stay on the app and not go back to the website because they love the app so much? Yeah, I mean that'll happen for a small subset of your loyal users, but like you just solved two major things there. If you are hyper focused on building your brand, well then you just improved your customer experience by giving that customer a channel that they prefer and they voted with their wallet that they prefer it, right? So you just elevated your CX, right? So if you care about brand, you elevated your CX. That's the intangible. The more tangible is the metrics, the changes that happen as a result. Three major areas that cause that LTV lift. Again, sessions per user, right, is through the roof because you're living on the device home screen. Conversion rates substantially higher because, well, what happens when you take your customers right now, the average it takes them, 8, 10, 12 clicks to check out. What happens when you bring it down to 1, 2 or 3 clicks? What happens when you go to Amazon, and it just they have your payment information saved already? What happens when you don't have to sign in again like you have to do on every website? You have to sign in over and over again every single time you go. When was the last time you were signed out of Amazon? Hasn't happened ever. That's the beauty of that. You remove certain friction points for your loyal customers. And then number three, the AOVs are about 20 to 25% higher in the app too. Why? Have you ever gone to Amazon before looking for one thing, you end up at it buying two or three things while you're there because Amazon just put that recommendation up there. It just was so easy. It made so much sense. And quite frankly, it was so frictionless that you just ended up walking away with two or three things that of that one you were looking for. That is the beauty of an app. It just may give customers a better, more intuitive experience. They're going to end up adding more to the cart of their purchase. So you see the AOV incrementality. So sessions per user incrementality, conversion rate incrementality, AOV incrementality, all resulting in higher LTV. So yes, some of those customers might move over. Yes, you might be cannibalizing some sales from the website, a small amount. But once that customer's in, the big pie between your website and app sales channel just gets bigger. So if you look at it the total pie instead of just one dimensional at your website, you'll have a much more solid view of like the value that the app's bringing.
Amazing. This was really interesting, a very interesting conversation. So I wanted to thank you for that. But before you go, I wanted to ask you a question. Who inspires you, or who helped you along the way in your career? Anyone you follow? Who is responsible for the success you're seeing today as a professional, not only as a, as an employee of a company, but as a professional, you have achieved something that many people want, to be a top voice in an industry, and I know you deserve it. It's not for everyone. So who is responsible for that besides yourself?
Someone I admire a lot that I've been following his journey for a really long time, I've learned from a ton. His name is Justin Welsh. Justin Welsh is like LinkedIn guru to the max, right? I view him as the social professor of our time. He had a wildly successful career as a sales leader, right, at some software companies, and he now has effectively taught everyone that follows his journey how to build a personal brand for themselves, right? And it's not just about personal brand building, but it's also how to use that brand to your advantage to help you in your career, your life, and other parts that just add value to people around you. So I followed his journey very closely. I followed his guidance. He is an absolute legend in what he does and the following he has built for arming people to feel empowered in building their own personal brand and using it in a powerful way. So he's given me a lot of inspiration. Um, Combine that with the absolute love for what I do day in and day out, right? The only way you can take someone you look up to, take their guidance and apply it is also if you also have the love to match what you're doing day in and day out. And that's where I'm at right now, right? So a lot of my content is a function of the love that I have for what I'm doing. I love e-commerce. Love working with brands. I love with the individuals that I get to meet with. Brand owners are some of the most grittiest, hustling individuals on the face of the planet, and I love getting the opportunity to work with them every single day. So now I combine that with what I've learned from Justin, and LinkedIn has genuinely changed my career trajectory in such a meaningful way, and I attribute a lot of that to what I learned from him. So yeah.
I follow him too, so I know what you're talking about. So I'm happy you mentioned him. He's great at what he does, and it inspires me too. So yeah. So Neil, it was great having you here. It was an honor to have this conversation with you. As I said in the beginning, I've been following you for a while, so it means a lot for me that you have decided to come to the show and discuss very relevant topics for e-commerce brands and advertisers as well. So I wanted to thank you. And before you go, why don't you tell the audience where they can go to learn more about you and Tapcart?
Um, you can always find me on LinkedIn. I live there 24 hours a day, so you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. And yeah, would love to entertain any questions anyone has just about retention in general. Quite frankly, I love meeting new founders. I love meeting new brands, and just having conversations, candid conversations about like what are the different challenges they're looking to solve. And I love doing that, right? Also, Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure getting the opportunity to chat with you. Really enjoyed our conversation. I've been following your journey for a long time. The work that you do is absolutely elite by all different, definitions. And just the mere fact that we had this conversation just made my day as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.